Tonight, President Donald Trump is directing ICE to expand deportations in Democratic-run cities. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jennifer Meckles. Mark has the night off tonight. In a social media post tonight, the president called on ICE, quote, to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history. Trump said officials should expand efforts to detain and deport people specifically in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and, quote, other such cities. It is unclear what other such cities means and if Denver falls under that description, but it does have a Denver mayor, Democratic mayor, who has already been called to Congress over his so-called sanctuary city policies. This all comes after weeks of increased immigration enforcement. ICE is aiming for 3,000 arrests per day, up from about 650 per day during the first few months of Trump's second term. This also comes one day after millions of people across the country came out to protest against the Trump administration. The No Kings protests saw thousands turn out here in Denver and across Colorado. Police say that those protests remain peaceful throughout the day on Saturday. There was a different story starting in the evening, resulting in 35 arrests during protests. 9 News reporter Angeline McCall spoke with our legal expert about what happens next.
Across the metro, largely peaceful protests. Then as the day wore on, Saturday evening, friction between law enforcement and protesters at a demonstration organized separately from the No Kings protest earlier that afternoon. Denver police say at one point, protesters tried to get on the highway to continue their march, and officers used non-lethal tactics to keep them out. In Denver, 35 people were arrested.
Considering the thousands of people involved in the protests, I think the number of arrests was surprisingly small.
9 News legal analyst Scott Robinson reviewed the charges. Most are municipal offenses, meaning lower-level charges than a misdemeanor, like failure to obey a lawful order or interfering with police. Robinson says many of these cases may not even make it to trial.
Many of the Black Lives Matter protesters had their cases dismissed because the reality is prosecutors know that people who are protesting are not there to, in general, to commit crimes. They're there to have their voices heard.
Ultimately, it will be up to the city attorney's office to pursue most of these charges that are currently filed. Angela McCall, 9 News.
Again, we want to stress that the planned protest in Denver, the No Kings protests, peaceful most of the day, as were the sister protests in cities around the state. People joined protests pushing back against policies of the Trump administration. People we spoke to there at those protests said they were frustrated with the administration's immigration crackdown and deportation policies. They also expressed general disapproval over how President Trump is running the country. All of that sentiment shared from Denver, as well as the other protests where we stopped by yesterday, such as Parker and Golden. Breaking news from Minnesota tonight. The man accused of shooting 2 state lawmakers and their spouses, killing one of the couples, has now been taken into custody. Police say the suspect is 57-year-old Vance Bolter. He's accused of shooting and killing Minnesota State Rep Melissa Hortman and her husband, as well as shooting and injuring State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. The Hoffmans are both out of surgery and recovering in a local hospital. The search for Bolter spanned a nearly 2-day-long manhunt, more than 100 officers searching the area near where the shootings happened. Police said they got more than 400 tips from the public. Right now, law enforcement and leaders in Minnesota are giving an update on how this arrest went down. When we learn more, we'll be sure to report those on the airwaves and online at 9news.com. Again, tonight, the suspect is in custody. It's another hot one in Denver today. Temperatures peaked in the 90s this afternoon. There could be much more of this later in the week. Let's bring in Corey Reppenhagen. Hot, little break, and then real hot.
Yeah, that real hot stuff coming towards the end of the week. It really does look like there's a good shot that we'll see our first 100, and it's only 6 days after we saw our first 90 here in Denver. Right now, though, man, what a very comfortable night across the Denver area. Temperatures into the 70s after hitting the 90s today. Not too much activity showing on the live radar picture right now, and they have scaled back the severe thunderstorm watch. The only storm storms are in Nebraska right now, and we could see a very similar scene as we get into tomorrow, as that will be the bullseye again. Temperatures will also be warm again into the 90s across the Front Range, Northeast Plains, 75 up in Winter Park. It's that time of year where we head to the hills to escape the heat. Here's the headlines, though. We're tracking a change coming on Tuesday. Possible rain and severe weather along the Front Range with a good cool down. Could see those high temperatures in the 70s on Tuesday, and then that record heat will be coming right behind that. I'll be talking about all that stuff coming up in the full forecast, Jenny.
Today was the last day of skiing for the season at A Basin, but people trying to get there ran into a literal roadblock. The Summit County Sheriff's Office says a landslide shut down Loveland Pass today. The Sheriff's Office says that happened on Highway 6, about a mile into Clear Creek County. Now the road is closed from just east of A Basin to Loveland Ski Area. No people and no cars got caught in this slide. That's good news. Loveland Pass, though, is still closed tonight. CDOT says there is no schedule at this point for reopening. Safeway workers in 4 Colorado cities are on strike after contract negotiations failed between the union and parent company Albertsons. UFCW Local 7 says workers are striking at retail grocery stores in Estes Park, Fountain, and Pueblo, plus a distribution center in Denver. The union says these strikes started small to bring awareness to the contract negotiations, but also limit the impact to shoppers. Workers say they have wanted Safeway Albertsons to address staffing and what they call poverty-level wages. Safeway sent us a statement tonight saying, in part, they remain committed to productive discussions with the union. They also say they are negotiating in good faith to reach an agreement. Schools here in Denver and around the country are facing declining enrollment. And after 2 back-to-back years of school closures for Denver Public Schools, the district is once again talking about potentially closing schools. But the district tells our Rachel Krause that wouldn't happen yet.
Yeah, DPS is talking about what's ahead for the district in the next 5 years. And while the dip in enrollment is serious, they stress they have no plans to talk about closing schools anytime soon. Denver Public Schools is once again talking about enrollment drops, big ones.
We're forecasting 6,000 fewer kids by 2029, which would be an 8% decrease in the number of students who are living in Denver and attending DPS.
I think it's a little more than what I thought.
Dr. Carrie Olson, the DPS school board president, says birth rates are dropping and people are moving out of Denver. Enrollment decline is hitting the district hard, even with thousands of new-to-country students.
It's not enough to stem that, and we don't know how long they'll stay. We brought in so many students, but then many left to try and find better places to live. Housing is always a challenge, but it has helped.
Of the new arrivals who we got last school year, we have retained 60% of them.
Andrew Huber studies DPS's enrollment. He says the district has already taken action to address the drop in students. In 2023, the board voted to close 3 schools. Last fall, the board acted again.
We just closed 7 and redesigned 3, so it's our hope that we've bought 3 to 5 years of not having to close any schools.
And more closures are likely.
If we see the declines that we're forecasting in the next 5 years, I expect school closures to be a conversation that we come back to during that time.
Those plans still years down the road.
As of right now, we are not thinking about closing any schools in the near future. We are not predicted to have this precipitous drop, feeling the full effects in 2030. So I would imagine within the next 5 years, the board will entertain closing schools, but it's not like we're going to do this next fall.
Olson says they want to be upfront about the issue now, so the community is ready to tackle this in the years to come. Another sigh of relief for many parents and school leaders. On Thursday, the board approved a 4-year hiatus on school closures through a policy that would limit how often they're able to close schools. Now, there are exceptions. They can still propose closures if there is a substantial change in student enrollment, in funding levels, or in the case of an unexpected emergency. In Denver, Rachel Krause, 9 News.
Denver police are investigating a deadly overnight shooting that happened near Coors Field. They say it happened on Blake near 22nd, just after midnight. When officers got there, they found one victim, took that person to the hospital, and that person later died. But police at this point have not offered any more information about the shooting, the victim, or the suspects. Colorado State Patrol is asking for the public's help in trying to figure out what happened to a cyclist who was found dead on the side of the highway in Garfield County this weekend. CSP says around 10:20 this morning, troopers responded to Highway 82 near milepost 10, close to Carbondale, after somebody reported a deadly crash involving a cyclist. Troopers found the man's body on the westbound side of the road. CSP says he was wearing dark colors. He was next to a red and white bike. They do not know what caused his death. They're calling this an unknown incident. CSP says he seemed to be traveling from Carbondale. Anybody with information is asked to contact Colorado State Patrol. We have that information on our website, 9news.com. This week, the nation is celebrating Juneteenth, the holiday, of course, commemorating the emancipation of enslaved people in the U.S. And to celebrate, the Five Points neighborhood hosted a big community festival today. Organizers say the Juneteenth Music Festival is a celebration of Black culture and freedom and community. Today's event kicked off with the parade starting at Manual High School. They got live music, performances, a youth boxing tournament, all of it. People that attended the festival told us how important it is to not just learn from history, but to also celebrate unity.
It's very important that we don't forget our path, and we continue to work forward. And the only way to do that is to be active in the community and show support. Let's love one another. We're all the same, no matter if you're white, black, gray, yellow. We are all part of America.
Juneteenth festivals ran all day and just wrapped up a couple of hours ago.